Yeah, sure.
Did those changes work for you, by the way? Like before you pushed?
Yeah, they were working fine. Yeah,
okay.
I tested them before pushing.
Okay. All right. Hey, Simon.
Hi.
Hey, Simon. How are you?
I'm good.
Okay, good. I caught a glimpse of a LinkedIn update that you put out there about the Meshery going into the landscape, which was fantastic. It's hard to get a good screenshot that highlights Meshery as the project that you're focused on. Just because the ones that are inside of the CNCF get a bit extra elevation, but that was good. That was nice.
Yes, Lee. I've actually figured out every Monday morning something regarding Meshery to add in the LinkedIn update. So people that got to know that we are working on that, we are making some progress. So I have very small time. I'm working on a private project. So I just throw it out that people might to know that we have achieved a very huge in a little amount of time.
Yeah, really. Yeah, totally. Thank you for that. It looks good. It looks great. It was a good reminder to me. Well, now I realize we're kind of, maybe let's just start the call and we'll talk about that a little bit. So we're about 3 after, so we'll get rolling. Good to see Karthik here. I owe Karthik a response on some things. So Karthik, we can probably talk about that. Actually, it's a great topic, Karthik, for this meeting.
Hey, Lee. Yeah, thank you. There's just a small POC that we've worked on. It's just a sample app. I just wanted to know how we can use that in the Meshery's context.
Yeah. Okay, nice. So let me share the meeting minutes and let's put it on the as a topic. Maybe the second topic to talk about. So sample GitHub Actions. Chaos. Let's see. Okay, so Simon, just to finish up that last conversation, that's great that you find just a quick minute to put something out. That's enough. That's good. That was a good just seeing your update was a good reminder to me that, well, a couple of things. One, that we need to go write that up a little bit and talk about all of last week's news, which was quite a bit. But then also specifically, I opened up this issue 428 on the in the layer 5 repo to ask that someone put that as news under layer 5 IO/news, because that was worthy of a post there as well. So good. So I asked Nupur if she wanted to do it, but if you're inclined to, please grab it. So.
Right. Yes, last time we were talking about that if somebody hit the Meshery website, so for the last continuous and he doesn't come back in a month or a 3 month or a 4 month, we have subscribed to them and showing them updates that encourage them to hit our website or encourage them to go on the slide. So I am very pretty much inclined for that. And also, I think we put together some other updates as well. What's consoles partnership with the HashiCorp, what console is updating. So people got to know that we are pretty much in the business now of updating ourselves regarding understanding other people's are doing. So I'm pretty much inclined with that. So really, I think everybody who's in the call encouraging that. So we can weekly show them the useful link for Meshery to learn about that. This week we have done that the last time we have updating this. Kush has updated the blog post out getting started with Meshery, and Luke Jugger has doing it. So every blog post containing the Meshery update, so we can throw it out to the user as well. So I'm pretty much inclined for that. I'm starting to subscribe for some news that's coming out, and every find a new item, or then I throw them in the LinkedIn because I have a very good community over here. So encourage them so they can want to join our Slack and participate in our project.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. To Simon's point, which is which is a really important point. There have been a few of us in the community that have contributed blog posts, and a few of us that have actually, like Karthik and Udit, who are here very directly, have helped contribute to Meshery going into landing inside the landscape, the CNCF landscape. And so thank you for that. Also, we'll put a small piece of news on the site, which will probably be nothing other than just a redirection that shows people the fact that it's there. And I guess to Simon's point, Karthik, as we take a look at as we discuss some of the items with Litmus Chaos today, if we do end up being successful with anything, really, whatever that is, I think that we should always consider that this blog is open to talk about that. It's open to highlight the work.
Yes, that would be awesome. Yeah. I think it'd be great to have a blog about that.
Okay, well, let's dive into this then. Actually, it's a good next topic. By the way, Karthik, last week was really something of a blur for me. I didn't even, I know in my mind, I know that there was a message that you had written, and I'd read like the first sentence, but that's about as far as. So don't assume that I have all of the context, I guess.
No problem. Yeah, no problem. So the context was, I think Udit and Raj were there in some of the calls in the preceding weeks where they discussed the possibility of running a chaos action where you could bring up a kind cluster as part of the CI pipeline through a GitHub action, and probably deploy an app that's part of the Meshery suite, and then run a simple chaos test against it. So we just try to improvise that workflow. So the thought that we came up with is you could have, and I also noticed the image hub sample applications that is being discussed on the Meshery CI channel, but maybe there is a good opportunity to try this with that application. So you could, as part of the CI, we could launch a kind cluster on the VM that is provided by GitHub Actions itself. And this is post building the Docker image for that particular application. You could run any unit tests or any such static checks maybe before doing the image build. And after that, once the kind cluster is created, you could do a kind load of the Docker image so that the recently built image is available on the cluster. And then probably launch a Kubernetes manifest such that it uses the image that has just been built as part of the CI. And once that application is built, there can be a liveness check, which is basically just trying to say that the application is alive and healthy, some kind of an indicator, followed by a chaos action. And if the chaos action is succeeded, now you could consider this like some kind of an E2E. If that is succeeded, then you go and push the Docker image into the repository once this is passed. So this is the flow that we sort of try to work with a sample application, not really a Meshery app, but just a Hello World app otherwise. Maybe Udit can just share his screen if that particular flow is handy.
Yes, sure. Thanks, Karthik. Hello, everyone.
Hey, Udit.
Yeah, so as Karthik mentioned, so a similar type of workflow, YAML is this. I will go through this. Let me trigger it first, so that just cluster creation time and all those times should get accomplished. So yeah, so we just make a sample push. Okay. Yeah, so this is the workflow YAML, which is going to be triggered. And the first step, it's basically building a Docker image. So this image is containing in the root directory here, contains some Hello app application, a sample one. It can be different according to our need. So after building it, we will just see whether it's up and there, and then we'll just make a kind cluster. So this Ubuntu image, Ubuntu latest comes up with the kind installation. We just need to up the cluster. I have chosen a default name. We can give that also. And after having the kind cluster up, we just need to uh, do a kind get kube config internal. It will just make it kind cluster to be accessible to our GitHub actions. And after that, just checking the nodes state, it's whether it's ready, it's healthy or not. So, and just saving the kube config to an environment variable, which will be used by our chaos actions, GitHub chaos actions. And then we will launch and have Hello app application using this image which we have created in local. So right now it's not pushed, and we will just use this to create this application, and we'll wait for it to come up, and we'll check the status of it. Then we will create a liveness pod in this, and then we'll wait for that also to come up. So this is the workflow. And finally, we came to our actions, which will just, right now it is pod delete. It can be different experiments. So just, I'm doing a just pod delete here and checking whether this pass this chaos actions or not. And then in the last stage, it will just push to the Docker Hub. And then it will tear down the application. So this is the whole workflow.
The part about bringing up the liveness pod and doing the checks is something that is customizable, and that can be relevant to the applications that we are bringing up. So the idea is to use the image of the app that we've just built as part of the CI, test its sanity, and then if all is well, if it survives the test, then we push that into Docker Hub.
So this is the run. So it deployed it built the Docker file, and now it's just checking it's whether they're present or not. And the whole workflow runs like that. Yes.
Yeah, this is pretty exciting. How long, well, or for this particular sample app, about how long does the full workflow take?
Yes. So yeah. So it takes 7 minutes, approx 7 to 8 minutes. Depends on the Docker build. So it can be it can vary with the builds. Like if it is a heavy Docker file, it might take some 4 minutes here. But yeah, so for some successful run, it takes 7 to 8 minutes. Like it was one successful run, it takes 8 minutes, 13 seconds for the same.
curious about Docker, or I'm sorry, GitHub's infrastructure and what they provide to open source projects. I don't recall if it was on this call or a different one that we kind of looked at the limitations on GitHub workflows and how many you can run and that kind of a thing for open source projects. Clearly, it's not an issue for whatever those limitations aren't an issue for what we're doing here. I guess the question I'm trying to get to is the kind of environment that you're spinning up is
Yes.
how many nodes is it, and have you run into any restrictions in terms of GitHub workflow that have confined the tests?
Yes, so current cluster which I'm using right now, I just took the default things. Like so, it will just build one master node and do that. We can customize it. Like we can give some number of nodes, like 2, 3, whatever we want, and we can do in that way also.
Okay. Do you know if there is if you were to try to put up a 100 node cluster, I'm assuming at some point there's like some timeout or some memory size or something that we can hop into, but do you know what that is?
Not really tried that thing, but yeah, I tested it with 2, 3 cluster nodes. I think it takes the VM, whatever the VM configuration is. If that allows to take it 100 nodes, it will run with that.
I think there was we sort of touched upon this in an earlier conversation, but have not really gone back and checked really. But there are these runners that we can probably configure. So that's a VM environment, which is not the one that GitHub provides by default, but we could set up one that sort of is fit for our requirements and get these actions run there. I think that's something that we could check as well.
We can add external runner. Yeah.
I see. Okay. All right. Another question here, or actually another comment here, and that's for Kanishkar and then anyone else who's focused on or familiar with the SMI conformance tooling effort. Kanishkar, if you think about how it's, so just a little bit of context for everyone else. So there's a cross between a community bridge and a Google Summer of Code project for Meshery to be used as a validation tool, a conformance tool, to assess whether or not individual service meshes are in fact compliant with the service mesh interface, the SMI spec. And so as we're on the forefront of executing that project, which means that we're also discussing a little bit of the architectural approach and kind of the tooling and how we would get it done. And it strikes me that one of the potential approaches includes, it strikes me that a lot of times we'll be doing those performance tests in context of a GitHub event, I should say, and that event being a new version of the SMI spec. Like there's a PR merge or something similar to that in the SMI project, that we would want to kick off a set of tests, validation tests. And these validation tests are a bit like what we're looking at here. They are end-to-end multi-system integration tests. And so I thought I would bring this up and ask, like, so Kanishkar, as you taking that into context and taking into context what Udi and Karthik just showed, to me, it seems like instead of these guys are using a sample app here to just show the concept, but that sample app ended up being Meshery, and if we added a few other steps where Meshery is one of the apps, Meshery then spins up a service mesh and invokes some of the tests that we need to do that could be integrated with chaos. might be a way of achieving part of the goals of that project more quickly. Any thoughts, Ishkar?
I mean, nothing as of now, but yeah, we could discuss on this. I think we should discuss on this.
Yeah, I mean, this is, it may not be that this would be the only way that Meshery would be used to validate SMI conformance, but it might actually be a relatively more expedient way, because Litmus Chaos, and not just Litmus Chaos, but just also this additional project that Karthik and we have. It could be a lot of the infrastructure or provide a lot of the plumbing needed. So I guess that in part begs the question, if we explore that a little bit, if you go back to the workflow where you're describing, I think it's the Litmus Chaos actions and the specific keywords that are built into that action, like yeah. So if in here, assuming that we've taken a version of this, modified it to deploy Meshery as the app, that we then also have Meshery invoke some of its functions to deploy a service mesh and some of the SMI components, that our integration test, if you will, would be, I think Karthik, like the intention would be that it would be defined here as a chaos action.
That's right.
And clearly the GitHub the chaos action that you guys have created has built in. It has built. I'm assuming, like, sort of first class knowledge of the type of experiment. Like, there's the type of experiment that you want to run. The experiment name is pod delete. Is that what I'm trying to get to? Is like, we're going to have defined particular integration tests or particular chaos, if you will.
Yeah.
How is, maybe if you would say more about, there's the experiment name, the experiment image. When that image comes up, how is its functionality invoked?
Okay, so this is basically, as you can see, these are all parameters that we are going to use to precondition the experiment YAMLs or artifacts, which are sort of going to be pulled as part of the chaos run itself. So there is this install litmus true that you see here. It's actually going to pull the experiment YAML and then going to precondition it with the details that you've provided, like app namespace, label, experiment image, etc. And then the experiment is going to be run according to that particular manifest. Now, this is a pod delete experiment. And like you said, this particular action with experiment name set to pod delete knows exactly to run only that experiment. But you could write the actions for including custom experiments for a particular app. So you know what all variables we want to pass to it from outside. We might have very specific steady state checks for that application, let's say the Meshery app. So pod delete might just be a part of a larger validation being done against the Meshery app. So it can be a separate action in itself or a separate category of actions for Meshery.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Just to get more familiar with it, of the actions that are invocable, it's like the experiment image that's listed there. This could be any custom experiment.
That's true.
And that the way to integrate with the chaos action that you guys have created is to have your experiment available in a runner-friendly format.
That's right. So there can be an experiment that's available on the Chaos Hub, which is, let's say, for the Meshery app. And then the action is basically just invoking that with all the variables that we're overriding from here.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So there's a couple of other contributors who are focused on the project that I was just talking about SMI conformance that aren't on the call, but we'll be having a call this week about our approach and kind of some of the action items that the team has. So we're going to spend some time looking at this, looking at if this can accelerate. I mean, I think it's kind of, there's kind of two things maybe. There's actually a couple of things I think at question here. One is what's being shown here valuable in context of the SMI conformance effort? Is what's being shown here valuable in terms of just Meshery's own platform compatibility testing? Because Meshery needs to be compatible with any number of environments that you'll be running meshes on and any number of service meshes. And so we've got kind of a gaping hole around integration tests, ongoing, compatibility tests. I think that was maybe the initial context in which we were talking about this. So there's a couple of avenues to explore.
Right. I think probably also as part of the discussion, we could just fit in the chaos workflows. I think in 1.4.0, we just sort of tried to write some more documentation around how you could use Arco to run parallel chaos. I think if I understood right, I heard you talk about performance testing. So you could have a performance workload triggered off and then parallelly have some kind of staggered chaos while the performance run is going on.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, that's right. There's another project that is about to endeavor into kind of distributed performance. And so, yeah, like we were talking about before, we're kind of missing a centralized scheduler, if you will, and something to kind of coordinate and orchestrate the test. So this is that's another venue, another use case. And that one, in some respects, is kind of, I think conceptually that one is even maybe the most aligned with the use cases that Litmus Chaos was sort of created for, and that being whether it was deleting a pod or saturating the network with a bunch of load. That one aligns really well.
Yep.
That one, yeah, that'll be interesting because that one makes a lot of value outside of GitHub workflows. Because we're going to want to run through a bunch of different environments. That's interesting.
So would you suggest, Lee, that we try out the same workflow that we've done with a Hello World app here with a Meshery application? Is the image hub a good one to try this out on, or do you recommend any other app where we could sort of see this working?
Let's think about that for a minute. The image hub one is nice and lightweight. It is at this very point in time, there's an enhancement that needs to be done to the Meshery adapter for console to really make that a smooth integration. I think that's a good app in general. At the moment, a bit broken. We'll have to fix that. If we look at the other sample apps that are included inside Meshery, they are also interesting candidates. Not quite as interesting. Not quite as interesting as the image hub, but they're still interesting candidates. And so the challenge here is that Nitish and a couple of others are on the forefront of looking at. Right now, deploys this mesh and then subsequently deploys a sample app. That's very easily driven through the UI, which is not, but the UI is interfacing with a REST API.
Okay.
And so Yeah, we would need to go. So it's not a big deal. It's just that we haven't I don't think we haven't really had any other clients using that API yet. And so this would be a good,
Okay.
There could be some hiccups. I hope not. But the reason I call out Nitish and a couple of others is because they're looking at Meshery CTL as a client to invoke those same operations, to spin up a service mesh, to deploy a sample app. And we haven't gotten there yet. But had we have already been on the other side of that, I think we would have worked through potential kinks.
Got it. Is there an application which you would, and forgive me for less knowledge on the Meshery side yet, is there an application which can be directly created via a Kubernetes manifest, for example, and is in need of some kind of sanity tests right now?
I guess actually in that regard, considering, well, a couple of things. I think how sexy the image hub is. Sexy, I mostly mean in terms of the hipness of the technology that it's doing and kind of how it's teaching people some new things and how lightweight it is. Even though it might be the right place to start because we will eventually fix the issue with the Meshery adapter for console. And because, to your point, there are Kubernetes manifests for laying down console and laying down the image hub. Even if Meshery has setting Meshery aside for the moment, you would be successful with deploying console using a Helm command and deploying the image hub directly applying those manifests to Kubernetes. So,
okay.
Yeah, so good. It is a good one to go for. The instructions on the README for image hub are accurate today, that you should have. You would have success in following those.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So this is good. So, assuming there aren't comments from others on this topic, the thing, Karthik, that we'll do this week is we'll be meeting on SMI conformance tooling, talking about the current approach, and then reflecting on this possibility as well.
Okay.
And then my hope would be that when we meet next week at this time, that we should either plan to kind of review the current, review those notes rather, kind of review the reflections of the others that are not on this call on how we might be able to move more briskly with Litmus Chaos.
Okay, got it. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, this is good. Thanks for continuing to, Udit, a great demo.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Thanks, everyone.
There's a lot of promise here. It really is an area of need for us. Okay, going back to the meeting. That's the wrong window. Back to meeting minutes. Anyone else have any comments on what we were just talking about?
Lee, can you hear me? Lee, just talking, just writing about when we're talking about the Meshery testing, particularly for conformance testing or some kind of a testing. I think it's obvious that we need some kind of a cluster there to test it. So with that in mind, I think we have two approaches. One is kind and one is K3S. So K3S I have written about and learning about that this is a cluster that built for production use cases. So K3S. So it's have a small and a very lightweight cluster. So you can test it out, run some edge devices and other thing as well. So I think if I understand the flow of that's some microconformance and so some kind of a Meshery commands as we're testing, we need a cluster there to test those commands. So a part of that, I think we need these two options, either go for the K3S or for the kind. For my knowledge, I think K3S is a very lightweight compared to the kind cluster. So K3 as an option for the production use cases, and also the K3s is from Rancher's lab. So they have a production in which you have a persistent persistent volume claim there. So you can tend a stateful application for that. So I think most of the people are going for the K3s because of their lightweight production use cases. So I think when we integrate the continuous integration testing, that's so we have to build these two clusters side by side. Either go with a kind, either for the K3s for that. So I'm not pretty sure. I'm drawing out some diagram, but some hindrance there for me. So how do we test Meshery in particular in this, what are the things that we're going to test? So in that place, I am really stuck right now. I have drawing the development workflow, but I'm going to the continuous integration workflow. I'm just missing what kind of things that we are testing. And when with this testing done, we have to go back to the production and go for that. So these two recommendation for me. I think we should choose check it out K3s as well.
Anyone else have comment there? Like on the merits of kind versus K3s for this?
Yeah, I think K3 is also pretty popular, like Simon is saying. And there's a lot of production usage with K3s from what we've seen. I think one of the reasons why we sort of demoed with kind, I think maybe it's a good exercise to see how the K3s goes as well. That will be a new learning for us as well. Kind, I think, is being used a lot in CI environments as far as what we saw with a lot of projects. I think it sort of is a pretty good fit if you want to do some quick tests in a very less intense environment. But yeah, I think I'll probably need to go back and check uh, what are the real merits of K3s over kind of this kind of environments.
Adding Karthik's point, I think one use case is that I think that excites that when we go for the kind cluster, I think people have to know about something about Kubernetes. So how Kubernetes operations work. So if we go to the K3s, many of the people are talking about, they doesn't wondering how the Kubernetes is working. So K3s is working on top of Kubernetes, and they done things on behalf of you. In that you have a very little knowledge of Kubernetes, you can go with that. I think in a kind cluster, when I'm working in the past, I think you have to know some particular things about Kubernetes. So I think if one person that have testing our Meshery and other, they doesn't know how Kubernetes work, I think they need to know, I think they confuse how the client is working. In regard, if the person who doesn't know Kubernetes and they go for the K3s, I think the K3s were doing very good, all of cool things on behalf of that and abstracting the way Kubernetes is work. That's how I learn people think about K3s.
Okay, thanks. I think that's a good thing to consider.
That gave me a moment to catch up on all the notes that we had from Karthik and Udit's presentation. That's good. The next topic that we had up was Kanishkar. So it's a topic that we had since we initiated this working group, and it's sort of the item where we were saying, hey, this is probably our highest priority within the, and that is to hold control over Meshery's releases, Meshery server releases. And to do that, we were saying, well, Meshery server needs to be first self-aware. It needs to be cognizant of its own version, so that, yeah. And so Leader had recently, like with this last week, I think, produced a updated the workflow to include properties.yaml file, the file system of the Meshery container image. And then now I think we're ready for these next two steps. Do we have one of these two? Do we already have? One of them is to create a REST API. The other one is to create and update the command Meshery CTL system version. Kush, you might your name might be on these already. I don't know. Kush, what do you say?
So do we need a REST API or the properties.yml will be sufficient? I didn't take much look into it once the Lidom made a PR about containing the properties.yml file.
Yeah, I think the primary, well, a couple of reasons, but maybe the initial reason for the REST API to expose Meshery's properties is so that a client like Meshery CTL, when you run Meshery CTL version, could return on the command line the version of Meshery CTL as a binary, and then also the version of Meshery server as a server. So to basically return the versions of the client and server, and the way that Meshery CTL interfaces with Meshery server is through REST. And so I think that's why we're looking for a REST API, a new endpoint.
So the endpoint should only contain a single variable containing the information about the server version.
It would probably end up maybe having a couple of items, maybe at the moment just two. I think that the new properties.yaml file that Lidor is now incorporated, I think it has two pieces of information. One is the release tag, so like, v0.4.0, and then the other one is the git SHA for that release. And so, yeah, the endpoint, if the endpoint was something like this, that it would probably return both of those. And part of the reason being is because if you do a Meshery CTL version now, it will try to tell you the client version number and the git SHA for the client. It'll also try to tell you the server version number and the git SHA for the server.
So I haven't done much work on it because after the properties.yml was created, I thought that we wouldn't need a REST endpoint. But I will surely demonstrate it on Wednesday meeting. I think probably.
Nice. Okay. Nitish, since you're on the call as well and have been, I think, entirely wrapped your arms around Meshery CTL. In this issue, well, I think this issue may not even say, it kind of does, but in a bad way, what the command name is. Today, Meshery CTL version, but just after we do the .4 release, do you foresee any need to change from Meshery CTL system version to something else?
So, I what is the question? Sorry, I didn't completely follow. Like this command exists right now, and it gives you the client, or does it give you the server version? Doesn't give you the client version.
It gives you both the client and server, but it's kind of lying to you when it tells. And so my question was, well, now that I'm running the oops. My question is almost rhetorical in that Yeah, as basically like we have a user experience today which says here's your client and server version, and when we actually stop lying to you and tell you no, really it's the server version is this and its Git SHA is this. The question was, hey, is there any reason that we would change from Meshery CTL system version to a Git? Like, does that still seem like the most appropriate?
I feel like a top level version command is more intuitive.
Okay. Yeah.
Just based on other CLIs where everyone either flags either passes the dash dash version or just the version command, but we could still have a system version that replicates the same behavior, and there's no reason why we couldn't do that.
I am updating the description of this issue to match that. That makes a lot of sense to me. Does anyone else see that differently? I just got interrupted with a call, so I'm not sure if someone.
Actually, come to think of it, if you're just gonna do dash dash version as a global flag, we don't need any of the other version commands.
Right. Yep. And so as we do, so that makes intuitive sense to me that like, hey, most of the time you use a tool like that, that's what you do. As we think about, just reflecting on it for a moment, all of the other Meshery server, all the other actions that you invoke against Meshery server, they'll be under the system command. We will have the use case where people will want to look up what version of a given service mesh or a given workload.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking about the same under the mesh command. Yeah, I guess that's fair. We can have the version under each of these parent commands, and we have the regular dash dash version that just tells you from a Meshery CTL perspective what the client and server version are exactly, like kubectl for that matter.
Nice. Okay. Yep. Very good. Makes sense. And it's probably one of the very few global commands that actually kind of constrains itself. It only, like, it's possible. I don't know. Another good thought here is, well, assuming that we have Meshery CTL mesh version, assuming that we already had that, would it in the future be desired behavior that this would spit out over?
This would spit out what? Sorry, I didn't. Got it.
Yep. So this top level global Meshery CTL version.
Yeah.
I wonder if it might be desirable behavior in the future for it to not only return the client and server version of Meshery CTL, but also the client and server version, or what the versions of all of the other.
Yeah, I think that's a legit thought too. Rather than having to figure out what the subversion commands are, you just have one top level that it gives you all the versions. Yeah, I think that's a better experience, honestly, than going into sub commands, unless we were doing something really different in those version commands.
Okay, nice. I'll try to type this up to be a little more understandable, but that doesn't.
Yeah, we could break it down though. Like, we could have instead of a global flag, you have a root level flag, and then you have sub flags within flags within every sub command that only tells you about the version for that that command, like if you say system, it only shows you the client and server. If you say mesh dash dash version, it shows you everything about the mesh. But if you do it from the root level, it shows you all the information. That's another thought.
That sounds intuitive to me. It sounds good. It sounds like
Mhm.
a powerful. It sounds like one of those things we should put into the CLI doc. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else have an opinion there? Yes, please. Be a hierarchy of version commands that get specific based on that become context specific based on. Needs to be more intelligently written, but yeah, that sounds okay. That was the last item of the day. Anyone have anything else? Or anyone have any comment on what we just, anyone see that differently, the version command? No? Okay, good. All right, good. Happy Monday, everyone. We'll speak a couple more times this week, I'm sure. Karthik and Udit, minimally, I guess we'll speak same time next week. So, if not before.
Sure. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks all. See you guys.
Thank you. Bye.